young couple were on the trail, and they came across a dog that was very upset. And it was moving back and forth, trying to investigate what's wrong with the dog. The gentleman looks into the woods, and he observes a lifeless body. I arrived at the crime scene, and in the bushes, there was a ditch. On one side of the ditch was a small white tennis shoe. On the other side of the ditch was a second tennis shoe. The young lady didn't appear to be a full teenager. The top of her clothing was ripped off of her. Her shorts and her underwear were ripped to her ankles. There was a vicious stamp mark with herringbone imprint of the bottom of a shoe across her lower face and neck.
The young victim has no form of identification on her and no cell phone. While police comb the scene, the dog is taken to the local animal shelter to be examined for DNA evidence.
As we are reaching out to get assistance from different departments, a mother shows up at the perimeter of the crime scene with a young man. She tells us that her daughter was missing.
The woman is Jennifer Millsap. She tells police that she and her daughter's boyfriend are looking for April.
Her daughter was walking the family dog, Penny. She gave us a description of the dog, gave us a description of her young daughter and what she was wearing. It became apparent that the dog we had was Penny and that the body was April Millsap, 14 years of age.
At the station, Jennifer files a missing persons report. She tells police that when April didn't come home, she called April's boyfriend, Austin. Austin told her that he hadn't seen April at all that day, but he did get an unusual text from her at 6:28 p.m. The text read, "I think I almost got kidnapped."
The conclusion of the medical examiner was it was death by asphyxiation and blunt force trauma. The stomping of her windpipe, of her neck, to the point that it collapsed. It was just a brutal way to attack somebody.
The shoe imprint was so clear that it was something that we could match against if we found the killer's shoes. With her shirt and bra being pulled down and her pants being pulled down, obviously we thought that she had been raped.
So a rape kit was done. The results are not immediate.
Police released photos of April Millsap to the media, confirming she is the girl who had been found dead on the trail.
We got a huge tip from a father and two of his daughters who had seen April on the path that evening.
The two daughters went to school with April. They know who she is. And April is talking to an older man on a blue and white motorcycle, and he's wearing a black helmet.
The father described the motorcycle as an off-road enduro, blue and white motorbike. With this tip, we actually have an interaction between April and another person.
On the heels of that promising tip comes another lead.
It was a mother-daughter combination that was riding their bike on the path on the day the murder occurred and called in to tell us they too saw a male with a motorcycle, moped-style bike talking to a young female who was walking her dog.
They went and did their loop and turned back around. By the time they came back, the young girl and the dog were no longer there, and all they saw was the motorcycle parked on the path. And one of the witnesses looked to the side in the woods and saw the man was standing there, looking at her, shocked as if he had been caught doing something wrong.
It actually scared the two women. They continued on. It wasn't until the next day, until after the media reports, that they called in and they gave us this information. The question I asked myself is, did they actually pass them as the murder was being committed?
It was very important to locate him and identify this guy because it was starting to look a little bit like this could be the killer.
Police bring in a sketch artist to work with the young woman who got a good look at the man's eyes.
When I saw this sketch, I thought, this is our guy. Who is he, and can he be matched to somebody that's out there?
At one point later in the day, I grabbed some lunch with my mom, who lives right outside of the town of Armada. And on my way back to the command center, I spotted a motorcycle down in a driveway parked next to a garage. I thought to myself, what if that could honestly belong to the killer, and I don't turn around to go take a look at it? So I turned around, pulled in the driveway, took a few photos of it, and took that back to the command center.
I looked at it and I said, absolutely, go out there and find out who rides this motorcycle.
With the information we had from the bike and the license plate, we found the owner of that bike to be James VanCallis.
We pulled up his driver's license photo and compared it to the sketch we had. And it was uncanny. It looked just like the sketch.
I immediately looked at it and thought, oh my God, I think this is the same guy. We need to find this person as soon as possible.
32-year-old James VanCallis lives 15 miles outside of Armada in Goodles, Michigan.
James answered the questions I asked. He told me that he was in Armada the night before on his motorcycle, that he had stopped at a gas station for a minute, but that he was on his way through Armada to go visit his brother at his brother's house.
VanCallis claims he left home around 5:30 p.m. and arrived at his brother's by 6 and stayed there until 7:30.
Did admit that he owns a black helmet. He told me he was wearing a pair of K-Swiss and went in the house willingly to retrieve them. Eventually, a female came out as well, later identified as James' girlfriend. She was reinforcing what James was telling me that he was wearing, including these shoes at that time. The entire time I was questioning him, I was asking myself over and over, is this the killer? I had a really weird feeling about him, and something just wasn't right.
VanCallis looked like the sketch. He had a motorcycle that looked like the one seen with April, and then he lied about when he arrived at his brother's. Those key factors led to a search warrant of VanCallis's home.
4 days later, police raid the VanCallis home.
Once we got into the home, we realized that he had a marijuana grow operation in the backyard. So we arrested him. It was enough to hold him until we sorted out what other items we found in that home.
As James VanCallis sits in jail, an unexpected witness steps forward with a bombshell for investigators.
I specifically remember James tell the officers that he was wearing K-Swiss shoes that night. James was not wearing K-Swisses at the time. He had on his Air Nikes. I knew James was lying to the police, but I could not say anything because something probably would have happened to me. I woke up in the middle of the night and James was cleaning his shoes with a sock. He had hand sanitizer sitting next to him, and he told me he was cleaning oil off his shoes. The next morning, I noticed the shoes were gone.
It was an absolute changing point during the whole investigation.
Detectives combed through VanCallis's social media accounts.
We found a picture of James wearing the specific black tennis shoes. And we ended up buying an identical pair to compare with the tread marks we had on April's face. It was that same herringbone pattern.
It was one of those aha moments. This was one of those solid pieces of evidence that I could turn to a jury and say, we've got the right guy.
James VanCallis is charged with her murder.
We charged him with the first-degree murder of April Millsap, felony murder, kidnapping of April Millsap, and the attempted rape of April Millsap.
A year and a half after April Millsap's murder, the trial of James VanCallis begins. The defense argues the lack of any physical evidence connecting VanCallis to the murder leaves plenty of room for reasonable doubt.
Before any analysis is done on the helmet, before any results are back, Mr. VanCallis is charged.
As the prosecution calls its witnesses, much of their case rides on the testimony of one person, James VanCallis' former girlfriend, Crystal Statler.
At first, I was afraid to testify against James, but since I was on the right side, I felt it was right to do the right thing.
Had you ever seen him clean his shoes before?
No.
She ties together the shoes, the bike, all of the characterizations that we use, all of the circumstantial evidence that we use comes directly from her. Does he say anything to you when he comes back to bed?
Yeah, that he messed up and he needed me to stand by his side.
I believe Crystal taking that stand and being able to testify against James was the beginning of her freeing herself from the shackles that James had her in for a very long time.
After deliberating for 6 hours, the jury returns with a verdict.
Count 1, first-degree premeditated murder. We find the defendant guilty. Count 2, first-degree felony murder, guilty.
Each time they said guilty, it was like a nail driven into his coffin.
Count 3, kidnapping. We find the defendant guilty.
First-degree murder and felony murder. In Michigan, that means life in prison without parole.
I felt great that he was going away for the rest of his life. I'm glad that Jennifer could get the relief knowing that he did it.
Granted, it's not gonna bring April back, but justice was served.